finding a comfortable posture, really taking some time to attune to the body, to listen in and settle in. You might find that you want to sit or stand or lie down, or maybe the body needs to move and walking is most helpful, or maybe you're still settling in, getting water or going to the bathroom or something. Whatever you're doing, that's great. You do you, taking care of this heart, this mind, this body in this moment. Each ever-changing moment. Welcoming yourself. Welcoming the moment. Just as you are, just as it is. Whether it's painful or joyful, delightful or frustrating, we are alive. And we can appreciate that. And we'll sit for about half an hour. SIT being an acronym from Rev Angel, Stillness, Intention Training, or settling into time. As we find that stillness within, things just settle of their own accord. We don't have to do anything, make anything happen. We get to stop pushing and doing and striving and straining, and we can be. Meeting ourselves, meeting this moment again and again. Enjoying these 3 sounds of the bell, a little wake-up sound, and then 3 full invitations of the bell. Noticing how they touch the heart, the mind, the body. Feel it, receive it. Mind, body, and speech in perfect oneness. I send my heart along with the sound of this bell. May all who hear awaken from forgetfulness, transcending all anxiety and sorrow. resting, allowing the body, encouraging the body, inviting the body to be in a comfortable posture that supports both relaxation and wakefulness. So that we can be both alert and at ease. Interested in this moment, open to receiving the direct experience of this moment. And noticing our relationship to the moment. So beginning with resting and relaxing, perhaps inviting the body to relax. May the body relax. May the body know ease. Savoring this precious opportunity to rest. You've carved out this time. You've given yourself this gift of being in Sangha. We can appreciate that and rest into the moment. We have arrived. We are here. Now, inviting in ease. And of course, there will be moments where there is an absence of ease, not a problem, not a mistake. This is the journey. And we can incline the heart, mind, and body toward rest, toward peace, toward relaxation and ease. Perhaps a short body scan would be supportive. Scanning down from the head to the toes or the other way around. Just inviting the body to relax. If that feels like it could help you, on your own, settling in to time. Just a couple minutes of silence as you invite your body to rest and relax in your own way. resting. Caring for your body. Perhaps as the resting has begun, some wisdom has arisen, and a different posture would be more supportive. Please move into that posture and rest there, touching your own internal wisdom. Resting and receiving. Noticing what's happening. Noticing what you're noticing. Opening to the arising and passing of each present moment. Receptive awareness, not trying to make things any particular way, rather recognizing things as they are. Scared, sad, mad, angry, happy, delighted, joyful, peaceful. What's here? Okay. No problem. It's just a conditioned arising. Hi there. I got you. Cultivating our ability to be here for ourselves. We can't escape ourselves. And we can miss ourselves so easily. With practice, we can learn to be here with ourselves, for ourselves, attending to this heart, mind, body. Noticing, hearing, witnessing the whispers of joy and the whispers of pain. I got you. I'm here for you. I love you. Hello. Finding your own words to meet and greet yourself in each moment's arising. Receiving. And then getting interested in and curious about our relationship to that which arises and passes, noticing how we just kind of habitually chase after the pleasant. Oh, that's a pleasant thought, or that's a pleasant fantasy, or oh, this is really nice. I want to do this every day, all the time. That's the way to happiness. That's the way to peace. It's such delusion and it's so universal. Chasing, chasing, chasing. More, more, more. We think that will bring us happiness, satisfaction, contentment, peace, ease. But it's a lie. For we only ever have this moment. The next moment is always the next moment. It's never now. And the past is past. Greeting ourselves now, in this moment. Hi there. I got you. I see you. I'm here with you. I'm here for you. I love you. And just noticing, oh, yep, there's that heart mind chasing after the pleasant. Hi there. Okay, yeah, you're doing your thing. No problem, not a mistake. Or, oh God, there's the unpleasant, pushing it down, pushing it away, running away from it. Getting angry, getting sad, getting mad, frustrated. Yes, hi, this is here now, due to causes and conditions. No problem. Of course, this is the response. Can we meet it with patience, love, care, understanding, or just meet it and notice what happens next? As we become aware, oh, this is greed. Oh, this is aversion, or oh, high delusion. As we become aware of our relationship to the moment, we're no longer caught in it. It's no longer running the show. Awareness is here, and awareness leads to wisdom, leads to insight, leads to freedom. And sometimes a wholesome mind state arises. Awareness, sati, mindfulness, is said to be the most wholesome mind state. And so when mindfulness arises, we can know that and appreciate that. Hi there. It's the same greeting. Meeting our experience. Or maybe a little bit of love arises. Feeling that contentment, that ease, or the absence of that, no problem. Maybe my saying that actually evoked grief for you, longing. Hi there. Oh, this is what longing feels like. This is how this pain in this moment feels. Oh, I can meet that. There's this capacity to meet the present moment just as it is. Whether the present moment is pleasant or painful. As our capacity to meet reality increases, there's more peace in our lives. Resting into the body, recognizing what's arising and passing, and becoming interested in our relationship, moment by moment. We practice like this. Now, just noticing what you're aware of or what you're aware with. It's possible to rest into the field of awareness and have a whole cascade of experiences flowing through. One can be aware while. Certainly thoughts arise and pass and emotions. Can we meet them? Can we know that they're here, not trying to stop or change anything? Rather meeting the moment, meeting ourselves as we are. Our love and presence is enough. Loving up on yourself with your own kind attention. simply meeting yourself as you are. It's been said that attention is the highest form of love. How can you tend to yourself now? With full awareness of the heart, mind, and body. Notice if any adjustment to your posture would create more comfort, more ease, more wakefulness, more presence. And engaging in that movement with as much awareness as is available, if movement is called for. And continuing to rest and receive. Recognizing our relationship to each arising and passing present moment. There is so much suffering in this world. At the very least, let us practice so as to not create more by being hard on ourselves. Expanding the field of awareness into movement, allowing the body move, allowing the body to move in whatever ways feel good for you, really listening into this heart, to this gut, moving and acting from a place of wisdom and discernment. Not prescriptive, but rather emergent. What does this moment call for this body? As you're ready, expanding into light, and if your body wants to get up big, use the bathroom, get a drink of water, that would be great. And once people come back and a few folks turn their cameras on, I'll introduce Danielle. So welcome to the San Francisco Dharma Collective. We're really glad you're here, and I'm really grateful and happy that Danielle Forward is here with us this evening. Danielle and I go back, I don't know, time is so funny, but I think like 10 or 15 years now, the way time does its ridiculous magic. And about 5 years ago, I was invited to offer something to a group of white practitioners who were interested in understanding their whiteness and undoing whiteness. And the timing of the calendar year, I was inspired to share with them a bit about the truth of Thanksgiving as much as I understood. And thank goodness there was a spark of wisdom that showed up. It's like, why don't you ask someone who is native a little bit and not just like do this from what you know with this like delusion that it can occur as you're acculturated white, that like you already know everything. I don't know if anyone else has that problem. I have that problem. And I'm growing to recognize it and to not act from that and not lead from that. And Danielle and I had a really amazing conversation, and I was able to offer to this group of people some perspectives that they hadn't been exposed to before. And I think it was very helpful for them, and it was very helpful for me to do that research that I did and to have that wonderful conversation with Danielle. And so this year, now that we're reestablishing Spiritual Friends Sangha at the Dharma Collective, I was like, I need to bring in Danielle, like obviously. And so I'm really glad that you can join us. It would be even better if we were all together in a room. And this is great. Like this is an upside of technology that we can be together, even though we're on the West Coast and you are not on the West Coast. I don't know the name of the land and the space that you're in, but it's my understanding that it's currently called Austin, Texas, though I could be mistaken about that even, but we're zooming in from unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land in San Francisco. And I have a little tiny bit more that I want to say. So things suck. Life is hard. This is not a new thing. 2,600 years ago, Buddha was like, laid it out for us. First noble truth, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, discontent, stress, suffering, like however you want to translate that. 2,600 years ago. And for 2,600 years, dukkha has been revealing itself in lots of different ways. And we are at one of those moments in this country. And not that long ago, in the grand scheme of life on this planet, this country was very different than it is. And rather than continuing to give you my take on the colonization of this land, I'm going to turn it over and to say that in looking at the truth, whether it's the truth of this moment internally, or the truth of this moment locally, or the truth of the moment nationally or globally, when we turn toward the truth, when we perceive reality, there's an opportunity for healing and growth and freedom. We don't find freedom by sticking our head in the sand like an ostrich or by running away from the shit. That is not how it works. So here we go. We're going to look at some truth. Thank you very much, Danielle.
Thank you, Augusta. Dear Sangha, dear friends, I'm so delighted to be in your presence. And thank you so much, Augusta, for the warm welcome and the teeing up. I deeply appreciated the meditation beforehand. It's been a while since I've done a Buddhist meditation. I do different things now, but it was a great intro because, as you mentioned, Augusta, as we talk about truth of the holiday this week and the timing of this week, there are probably a lot of heavy feelings that will come up for myself, definitely, and for probably most of you in the room. Um, if you identify as being American or if you identify as being white, and um, our identities are so complex, right? If we feel, depending on how tied we feel to this place and to this country and to this land, I do have immigrant friends as well that were born in other countries that don't have the same relationship to Thanksgiving or this holiday or the origin of this land. So I just want you to notice if big feelings do come up for you, things like guilt or anger or sadness or fear. Just notice that and know that I understand and I accept it. And anything that comes up for you in terms of questions as well, I totally understand and accept. Um, and just remember to welcome that into the space. So to start with, I don't know how much you all know about me, but I am indigenous to the Bay Area. So I'm Pomo. I'm currently on Tonkawa land in Austin, Texas, but I am native to the Bay Area, and I now run a nonprofit that helps Indigenous people with economic empowerment and intergenerational healing. So that's a lot of trauma work and it's a lot of poverty work. So as you can imagine, it's a lot of the heaviest stuff of life, a lot of dukkha. So I have a deep relationship with that personally in my family and, with all of our Indigenous people. And I'm deeply honored to be talking about this subject because it wasn't that long ago that I didn't know what to say because our public school institutions tell you one version and they don't care if you're native or not native. If you go to public school, you learn the Thanksgiving story. This is what happened. End of story. If you're actually native, you know that that's not what happened because your family will tell you and you'll have a very different experience at school, which is what happened to me. Um, so I'm sure you all know the story. And I have some notes here, and a part of this will be historical and factual, and part of it will be my own personal experience of how this all felt to me as an Indigenous person today, and how my present day suffering and the present day suffering of my mother and her mother has always been tied to the pain of the people that first arrived here and the pain of the people that were displaced in Scotland and Ireland and England and so on. So to begin with, uh, the story starts with the feast, right? And there was a feast, but the name Thanksgiving was actually used in a different context that I'll get to later. The historical story of the Wampanoags um, having a feast with the colonists there. They didn't actually call that a Thanksgiving, but that is the story that they refer back to. And they like to say that that was the first contact, but at that time when that first feast happened with the Wampanoags, colonists had already been on this land for 100 years at that time. So there was already a fur trade, there was already things going on. Um, and the Wampanoags were civilized, meaning they were farmers. So the land was cultivated and there were crops, beans, corns, and squash. If you're familiar with the Three Sisters, which is part of that region, that indigenous region's agricultural technology, it was a very advanced growing method. So this was not like, the wilderness and they didn't know how to do anything. And in fact, if the Wampanoags didn't know how to farm, then those colonists wouldn't have survived whatsoever. So given the context of this, I just want to set the stage. So there was a feast, but it wasn't like the gratitude story that we know it today. It was more like a sort of coincidental happening in a political alliance. So at the time, the Wampanoags were pretty devastated in their population by a plague that had just run through. They were at war with the Narragansetts at the time. The colonists arrived, and sadly, the first thing that they did was take food and tools and items from native graves that they found around. And the Wampanoags that were left found these new colonists, and they formed an alliance so that they could protect themselves against the Narragansett. And then many of you might know of Squanto. He is real. And he did teach those colonists planting techniques that I mentioned, and they had a successful harvest, and that's how they survived through the teachings of Squanto. So when that feast actually happened, it's funny what the accounts say because the colonists, when they did take that harvest, Native people weren't actually already there or invited, and they were celebrating and they shot their guns in celebration. And then a bunch of the Wampanoags came over, like 90 of them, because they heard the shots. And then it was sort of this, the historians say it's sort of this like this coincidental thing. And then they had a bunch of food, and then the Wampanoags decided to go bring some deer because, like, I guess nothing was happening and they were shooting for a good reason and not for a bad reason. They were coming in to check on if there was any danger. That's the interpretation of what actually happened on that feast. Um, and then they ate food, and then that was it. And there was no mention of Thanksgiving. So that is the story that they use. Um, and that was the end of that. Sadly, later, though, that political alliance dissolved, and it became King Philip's War. And the Wampanoags also suffered the same. Sorry, distraction. My cat is very loud. The Wampanoags also, they had also formed war with them later on. So it was a very small blip of circumstance. And then the actual word Thanksgiving had an interesting meaning that came from an English tradition already. So, for some context, Thanksgiving, days of Thanksgiving and days of fasting. So, in England, and especially for Puritans, which this is where it comes from, the puritanical, the Protestant English holiday of Thanksgiving, days of fasting were done when things went wrong. So there was a famine or disease or war in England. And days of Thanksgiving were celebrations that God's will was, that they had received God's will of divinity and they were in God's favor. So there was fasting when bad things happened and feasts when good things happened. And that's where the word Thanksgiving came from. And the Puritans brought this with them, brought this tradition with them. And that's how it was understood. It wasn't like Native people and colonists got together and now we have Thanksgiving. It was Thanksgiving was a practice already practiced in England when good things happened, when they perceived God's favor, especially Puritans who were incredibly religious and interpreting God's will all the time. And they started to apply that to things like military victories, which was also common in England if there was a military victory or political victory or a war that was won. So the Puritans started applying this word to military victories. Unfortunately, what that means is military victories over Indigenous people. So you'll notice if you look at the history, the first mention of Thanksgiving, the word is from the Pequot massacre, in 1637, which is several years after that feast story. And the Pequots they had political power, they had wealth, they had control of the fur trade. Um, the colonists used a single English death as justification to start this war with the Pequots, when really it was about wanting more land and the political and economic control of the fur trade in the region. And this is the part where, my heart hurts to say, but I feel that I have to share it with you, which is this was a massacre. It was 700 Pequot people, women, children, elders that were burned alive, that they set fire to their village. And this is the pain, right? This is the pain of the truth that we decide to have the courage to look at, right? To look at and to see it. And it's okay if it feels uncomfortable. It should, right? Because that's deeply disturbing. The survivors of any of that were either enslaved or sold to the Caribbean. What's even more disturbing, and I have left these quotes out, but if you look at the writings of who led the Pequot massacre and the things that they said, it's horrific. That they said that things like it was an ungodly sight to see their bodies burning, but we knew it was God's will. That sort of thing. Like this sort of disturbing, distorted justification, perceiving God's will as the reason why this must be done, and citing scripture saying that women and children should be sacrificed because they find some biblical reference for it, and so therefore it's okay. We found justification for it. Meanwhile, it's political and for land. That's when the word Thanksgiving was proclaimed. So again, this is a military victory. The governor, John Winthrop, said, "This day forth shall be a day of thanksgiving, kept in all the churches for our victories against the Pequots." So that is probably the earliest Thanksgiving mention, and again, a proclamation. So that was that English tradition. It's proclaimed. Now we all feast. So I noticed myself having a very conflicted association with that word in general, right? Because historically, for our people, for Indigenous people, that was the celebration of massacres of Indigenous people for the sake of taking resources and land for them and justifying it through whatever scriptures or rationalizations that they can make up, saying that this was inevitable, that this was ordained. And their worldview was that they saw this as God had given them the land and this was divine destiny. For me, right? So this is where I notice, so here's my suffering again, right? So the suffering of my family today. And I see how many of our Indigenous people are struggling today with, the worst suicide rates, the worst health, still poverty, so much intergenerational trauma. And this was just one instance of many, which is why it's so monumental and still echoes through our communities. But I feel my own pain and my mother's pain. And what I started asking myself was, to tie it back to Buddhism. And when I was reading Thich Nhat Hanh, as I was grappling with all this, because it's almost unconscionable, like what occurred. And if you read their journals, if you read the books, if you read Indigenous history books, it's almost hard to imagine how this could be possible, right? And I think what I needed, or the thing that I needed at that moment, was to look deeply, to look into what created so much pain, like what created so much malice, or what created this distortion of an identity, and where does that come from? And so that's where I started looking, right? I just started doing the deep looking, like our teachers tell us, right? Because that will show us, hopefully, where this started and where this all comes from and how the interbeing of it all exists. And so that's what I started doing. I wanted to understand how this could even be possible. And if you look, as I looked into history, it was waves and waves of land being taken from the commons. It started in Scotland, actually. So the English took invaded Scotland, and they took it from the Scottish, and then they dispossessed them of their land, and then they forced the Scottish to go take over the Irish, and so now the Irish are also being dispossessed and taken from their land. And I'm noticing that's so interesting how they just took one population and did the same thing over and over on different parts of the world, and how their pain, the pain of the Irish and the pain of the Scottish, became the pain of the indigenous people, right? Which becomes the pain of addiction today, which becomes the pain of drug abuse and intergenerational trauma. And I'm just noticing all of this timeless, right? Like sweeping through everyone. And I think why, like, what drives that? Like, what is so important that they have to be doing that? And this comes into the political structure of it all, right? Like, you can't study colonization very long before becoming aware of capitalism, becoming aware of colonial capitalism and the reasons for building wealth and power for England. So for England, one of their main drivers was that Spain and France were becoming global powers. They were doing the same thing, colonizing and taking resources. And England was under threat of being potentially invaded as a tiny island. And they're thinking, how do we get money to afford navies and to protect ourselves and get rich too? Because we're afraid, right? Like, we're afraid of Spain and France. So what do? They take away the commons. The commons, arguably, is one of the beginnings of capitalism, because when you take away land from people to have subsistence for themselves, you force them into selling their labor to eat and survive. And so at the time, wool like from sheep, was very popular in terms of making money. And wool required a lot of land because you need a lot of land for sheep. The wealthy in England are thinking, we could just take all these peasants off this land and have a bunch of sheep, get a bunch of wool, make a bunch of money. Now we're good. That's exactly what they did. And guess where those peasants went? They were sold the story that you'll get free land in the new world if you just go over there and work for us and you join our military and you join our colony. All you got to do is just join our military. There's free land. And so for these people who, England was overcrowded, there was a lot of poverty. They're like, to them, it was probably an obvious choice. And for the English, I'm not sure how they felt, but there are many accounts of when this happened to the Irish, of them being heartbroken to leave their land. They never wanted to leave Ireland. Like, if you read accounts of it. And I'm sure much was the same for the English. And so this is when I gave myself an opportunity to develop more understanding, to develop more compassion. I think it's incredibly hard to have compassion and understanding in times where you feel personally slighted, right? Like, where you feel like this group of people, like, because of this group of people, that is why I suffer. It can be incredibly hard to build understanding and compassion in that way. But, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, we can only have love and compassion through understanding. And so that is why I read all of these books. That is why I started looking deeply. That is why I tried to understand what was driving these economic decisions. How has capitalism as a global structure influenced colonialism and genocide? What have been the the parts, right, that have created the system that creates my personal experience and my suffering today. And to tie it back to Thanksgiving, like I mentioned, that's what they would say after each massacre, right? That was the English tradition. And how it became a holiday is interesting because as US history goes on, as there is more expansion and more massacres, and there are people in New England that are promoting that this should become a national holiday, like people like Sarah Hale. By the time Lincoln and the Civil War comes around, Lincoln decides that this could be a way to unify the country, declares Thanksgiving a national holiday. This is 1863. But ironically, at the same time, this was a huge time of continued massacres and genocide for Indigenous people. At the same time, Thanksgiving is declared a national holiday. One of the worst of them, the Sand Creek Massacre, was a year later. It's the saddest thing you will ever read if you decide to read, Burying My Heart at Wounded Knee, describing the Sand Creek Massacre. It is also, I think, one of the only national park named after a massacre. Fun fact. I think it is. I think it is a national park. It's some national monument. That is in Colorado. But and then now we have this sort of fabricated origin story to create probably some more economic incentive for us to buy stuff. It's just, and then now we've arrived there, right? So like, it's an interesting through line because you can sort of feel capitalism like throughout the whole thing, which is interesting, right? And none of this is, I think we can never really be separate from that political economic reality. At the same time that we have that very deep human felt sense of our experiences and our pain being transferred over and over and over onto other people. And I think it's that the seizing of that transfer of suffering, right? That mindfulness, that understanding, that compassion can finally give us, because I think that important lesson, that takeaway from me is that, absolutely, I've felt angry. I think many people have felt angry about many things that have happened in history and to their lineage, and it's totally valid and healthy. And for me, peace, I do feel true peace comes from that deeper understanding of how everyone's pain has been tied up in everybody else's pain, including mine. And it continues to, right? And I think the minute that you decide that you are no longer going to transfer your pain, I think is a moment of incredible power and peace, because that's the other pattern, right? If you notice, if you continue to look deeply, and then you decide with your own agency, with compassion and love, that you will no longer transfer the pain. And it's really some of them, it's the most powerful thing that you can do. But like, our teachers have always said, is that mindfulness, that choice has to come from that awareness, right? That awareness and that tenderness and that deep looking. Otherwise, there's so much unconscious transferring. People are just transferring and transferring. So that is most of what what I have to share. Today there is a day of mourning, a national day of mourning in Plymouth, held by Indigenous people. I did want to provide more of a broad perspective of how all different types of Indigenous people experience this day, because there's a broad variety. Some people call it a day of mourning. Some people protest. There's a protest on Alcatraz. If y'all in the Bay are interested, I have been there. It's awesome. Um, Folks go there at sunrise to protest. And that's been happening since the 70s, I think, since the American Indian movement started these things. And for some, they're like, they just see it as the sort of, it's a day to get together with family and friends. So there's all that variance in there, right? There's all of that and everything in between. And it can also be a time of deep looking. For me, I do feel mixed. I do feel conflicted. I think I understand. I hear the intention and what people are saying, and I know that when they tell me Happy Thanksgiving, they're wishing me well, right? But as a Native person with this deep understanding, I'm like, I try to receive their intention, right? And I do. I don't get offended, but it's definitely a time where I continue to look deeply and I think I can have some peace in the work that I do now, right? Because it's also like, what do we do now, right? How do we continue to heal the suffering that is continuing to unfold after that? It's like an echo, right? It's like, how do we continue to mend that, which is the healing work that I do now? So I think, yeah, I hope I did that justice. Um, and I'll open it up now to any reflections or questions that you might have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Danielle. So much in there. I wanted to put a pause in a couple of times and have a conversation, and then continue. And because we're not sitting here together, that's not the structure that we have. The first thing I guess I want to lift up is your language is a little bit different, and it was evocative of the language from Resma Menakem. Are you familiar with Resma Menakem?
Mm-mm.
Awesome. So he talks about clean pain and dirty pain and how we blow our dirty pain through. And then the roots that he offers from that were quite similar to the roots that you offer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I should
because
look
that's
into that.
reality. My grandmother's hands is the book that I am
Oh,
speaking from. My grandmother's hands. Yeah, and
writing it
he's a
down.
yeah, he is a somatic practitioner and psychotherapist, and the name of the city is escaping me, but where George Floyd was murdered,
Mm-hmm.
that's where he lives, and
Oh,
was able to do a lot of work in the community in that time. And it's powerful work, but just simply the pain being transferred. Oh yeah, these people did this to these people, and then they did the same thing to these other people, and they did the same thing to these other people. It also makes me think of George Orwell's Animal Farm, right? Some people are more equal than others, or some
mm-hmm.
animals.
Mm-hmm.
Some animals are more equal than others. I mentioned that book to Jorge in some of our conversations, some of our Dharma stuff. And it's like, yeah, if you don't turn and tend to your own suffering, you just keep perpetuating it. It's unavoidable, right? It's the conditioned nature of the situation, and we have that happening now, right? This
Mm-hmm.
is like the legacy of this industrialized world. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, someone was shitting on me, so I'm going to shit on you. Like it's really problematic.
Totally. Or a constant battle of fear and Fear, power. It's exhausting. Because I was like, well, why did England have to compete with Spain and France? Like, I'm just like, why? Like, well, because they're afraid of being dominated. I'm like, why is
Fear.
everybody dominating? Yeah, it's just, yeah, everywhere.
Yeah.
Exhausting.
It's so exhausting. And then we lead to unskillful behaviors. Like
Hmm.
that's where it goes if it's not met, if we don't increase our capacity to meet it, to meet the
Totally.
reality. And as you said, some people can make a choice to behave differently or do something differently. I know that in my own experience, I didn't find that I was able to make that choice, that I had to put in the practice and the work and the time such that the behavior could change. I would have changed my behavior
Hmm.
a long time ago if I could have. Like I didn't have that capacity.
Hmm. Hmm.
And over time I was able to be with and sit with the pain that was inside of me, that was conditioned inside of me. And I didn't have to keep blowing it through other people. Didn't have to continue to act out in different ways. And it took a lot of time to be able to sit with it enough, to turn toward. And today, when anger and fear arise, awareness is there with them and it meets them and greets them. It's like, oh, yeah, hi, I got you. And then I'm not a bitch. I'm not an asshole. It's like, oh, you're suffering. What do you need? What do you need? I love Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching about a plant. So you have this plant that's not doing so well. You can see it's not really okay. You don't blame the plant. Like no one would ever blame the plant. We're not quite that crazy. We look at the plant and we wonder, oh, what's amiss? What do you need? More water, more light, less light, new soil, a bigger pot, it's too cold. Like you naturally explore the conditions when it's a plant. If only we could give that same gift to ourselves and to other people. It's like, oh, there are some conditions at play, which is exactly what Danielle, you just elucidated for us. Like, here are all of the conditions. This is why this shit happened. It didn't come from nowhere. None of it comes from nowhere.
Hmm.
Really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Augusta.
And I would still love to hear your response to how can I help people just consider, what this holiday came from?
Hmm. What a great question, John. Thank you for I don't know if you feel vulnerable asking that, but I'm just appreciating. Yeah, I think that's a vulnerable question. Thank you so much. And I hope I'm helping to at least create a sense of safety for folks because honestly, I know that everybody has their own emotional experience with their identity in their own way, right? Um, and I think while all of our, while all of our emotions are valid, I think the best thing we can do is try to invite people in to share where they're really at, right? Because otherwise, to create a sense of safety so that they can share where they are really at. So thank you for your authentic question. It is hard, right? I think it probably really depends on how close you feel with the people there, how those people identify, maybe what their interests are. Like if you know them to be people that would be interested in this sort of thing, or if that you find them to be compassionate people that are humanitarians or they really care about um, like social impact or social justice or things like that. But I always I recommend an invitation, and you're right to say that you don't want to be a downer because that's the hard part, right, about the healing work. Because I do a lot of work with, people that have experienced trauma, healing my own things, and it almost just hurts the heart to even hear that word, doesn't it? Like it's just a little like, oh. Um, so I like to offer. something in the most positive way I can, leading with maybe the positive intent, and you could just talk about yourself. You could say, like, I'm really feeling a lot of compassion for Indigenous people these days. I'm really thinking a lot about how history has unfolded and how their conditions today are products of what happened originally and how this holiday is related. And I'm really feeling a lot of care and consideration about it. Right. So you're just talking about yourself. And all of that is true. And all of that is caring, right? And positive. It's like I notice I feel a tenderness and a compassion and I'm wanting to help. I feel really concerned about this and I want to do something that can maybe help correct some of what happened. How do you feel hearing me say that? Does it feel like a little more? I feel a little lightness when I say that. I feel like it's easy to hear, but you tell me. Yeah, and you can just see who perks up, right? Like
Mhm,
you'd be like,
mhm,
"Oh, like yeah, I've thought about that too," or "Oh, what
mhm.
do you mean?" Or you can say, I went to the Alcatraz celebration of, Indigenous heritage, and you could talk about it in a positive way, right? It's just a way of channeling your feelings and channeling that energy, the energy of compassion or the energy of care. I'm not quite sure what the emotion is for you,
Oh,
but
yeah.
right. And it could be,
Yeah.
and if you read the vibe and you're like, I don't think these people would be interested, then, maybe just going to Alcatraz and like donating to the friendship house is enough, right? Like just finding a place to move that energy into so that it moves, right? So it feels resolved. So you feel resolved within yourself. But if
Yeah.
you do feel like, well, I need to say something, then there can be those gentle ways of bringing it up and just and sometimes I think when we say something, it might be for you. It might be less about their reaction
Mhm,
and more about you just saying it. And
mhm,
that's beautiful too, right?
mhm,
So you can also just let go of how they react or don't react, and
mhm.
just maybe look inside and think, who is this for? What is this about for me? And just saying it just might be enough. And they can say whatever, and then you can feel proud that you were in alignment with you.
Thank you.
If it's helpful, I'll bring in also to encourage you to practice attuning to yourself while you're there. And so you're speaking from your truth and wisdom as Danielle was offering the I statements. And specifically, like, how does it feel in my body before I say this? What am I going to say? How does it feel as I'm saying it? Okay, I've said it now. How does that feel? So you're really tracking yourself. It's for you. Yeah.
Okay. So I got a question. You, what I understood of what you spoke about is that the origins of oppression comes from capitalism, and we still live in a capitalist society. So, what would be your view on how to live in a skillful way in a capitalist society?
Hmm. Yeah,
How
what a
would
great question. Yeah, it's hard, right? Because I think we both feel, I think we all feel this sense of the power within us, but also the structures that we exist in, right? That it's sort of like, what do we have power or control or influence over? And I know there are many people that have talked about and introduced alternate economic systems, and there's some people that live completely off the grid. And if one chooses to stay within the current system, people find other ways of escaping it, right? But if one chooses to live within the current system, I think it's up to you to determine what you feel aligned with and good about, and what your values are, right? So I point it back to what we actually have influence over, and what we can't control, and what we can do, and what feels good to us. And it's almost like the acknowledgement and acceptance of there are things in the world that happen that we can't control, that cause suffering, that we feel a lot of concern and sometimes pain over, right? Or grief over. And it's natural that we feel grief or sadness about those things because we see people suffering because of it. And at the same time, I find myself refocusing back on what I can do and what I feel good about. And it's okay that we can't have the power to take down a whole system single-handedly. That's okay too, right? It's sort of like, I at least try to invite acceptance and understanding of what our own limits are, and that's okay too. So it's really, for me, deciding what would I feel proud of, what feels most aligned to me, how do I want to live, and how can I be an example of those values that are important to me. What are the values that are important to me that I see other systems neglecting? And how can I uphold those values in a different way despite this thing operating, so that I can provide a positive alternative? To me, that I think is the best we can do. And sometimes that's massive. Sometimes that becomes massive. And I think, it can be underestimated, but I think that's how anything good ever happens. It's really like the belief and the alignment and the conviction and the decision to operate in a different way. And sometimes you get people to go along with you, and then now you have a group, and then the group gets bigger, and that's how things happen, right? So, but at the end of the day, it's how you feel, and you making the mindful, conscious choices of what feels right to you, what's aligned with who you want to be, which is ultimately each of our responsibilities. You could start a movement tomorrow to take down capitalism. I'm not doubting you whatsoever, right? But it's also not necessarily required at the same time. There's so many angles of being of service, if that's what you want, right? So my angle was, I'm going to figure out how to heal for good. And then I'm going to teach other Indigenous people how I did that. And then I'm going to make a school out of it. And then I'm going to make more schools. Right? So I primarily work through how the transformative power of compassion can sort of clean up a lot of that pain. So that's where I put myself in the world. So it's really up to you where you want to put yourself.
Okay.
I hope that
Thank you.
answers your question.
How you see it as far as an Indigenous person, of people wanting to come to the United States. And do you want to just put up walls? Do you want to, what is the way to migrate? That's kind of my question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Um, well, indigenous people typically don't believe anybody can own land. So the a lot of the sort of fundamental worldviews were very incompatible. So the Western idea of like ownership and private property was not something Native people recognized, and frankly, was part of the reason why some of the treaties they didn't understand what they were signing. They didn't really do that either, right? Um, so from that regard, if nobody can own it, then it's for everyone. At least that's how I interpret it. Um, which makes it pretty simple, right? It's like a pretty short answer to your question. But I think there's like plenty of depth in that too, right? Which is like this concept of ownership. I mean, Native people, again, typically think of themselves more as stewards of their land and their place rather than owners in any sense, right? It's having a relationship with that place to where they can see and take care of the ecology of that place. They can see for generations how a certain population of animals or fish or birds is in good health or not such in not such good health. Um, which is why the folks that were in Plymouth when they arrived found it in such great condition because the native people have been taking care of that place and doing controlled burns and doing things to take care of the land for forever. Um, so yeah, I mean, with that in mind, I mean, it's incompatible, right? It's like, of course, it's like, of course, people can come and go, right? Because we all come and go on this place, and the people that have a tie to that place, that love that place, they take care of that place. So, it was pretty common for there to be visitors and for, there to be trade along different routes. I think there's even a relationship, I believe, of the Navajo to folks in Alaska. Like there have been historical trade routes of native folks, just like, you know, crossing different territories and things like that. But again, like you mentioned how natural that is. So it is natural. And everyone is welcome. So I, I hope you got that message. Hmm.
Imagine if we could have freedom from that idea of ownership and instead tend to a place, tend to ourselves, tend to each other. And greed is such a, I mean, according to Buddhism anyway, right? Greed and aversion are the root kilesas, or the root defilements, the root cause of all of our suffering. And when I think of the way people are being treated in this country today, and I think of the various wars that are happening all over the world, and as Danielle named, fear, I sometimes in my own practice feel like fear is underneath even greed and aversion. And from a Theravada perspective, that's not the understanding that fear is a type of aversion. And I think there are other traditions. I think in the Tibetan tradition, or maybe some other traditions, fear is named as underneath both greed and aversion, which that's much more aligned with my direct experience of it, because there's a lot of fear in this system. And it's just fear. It's not fear of some future outcome, right? It's not aversion. It's fear. And if that's the human condition, if that's the condition of birds and fish and mammals, right? Something that's got enough cells to have an organism. If fear is a naturally occurring, unpleasant heart state, mind state, then how do we care for our fear? What if that became the question? Recognizing and tending to our own fear. Oh, yeah, of course you're afraid. I got you. Or whatever your journey will be. That was my journey. And Danielle named compassion so specifically, was really touching the fear, holding myself in the fear, not trying to fix it, not running away from it, not pushing it down, not distracting, but like, oh, hi there, I got you. And the first time I had the opportunity to do a long silent retreat, I was at the Insight Meditation Society for 6 weeks. And my posture was lying down. I was just in the hall, lying down, meeting the fear. And over time, I came through it. So each time I went to lie down, to sit, fear would show up, and I met it. And I would go into a different experience. Not because I fixed it, but because I met it. And so I offer that as a possible way to access the clean pain or to do the transformation so that we don't continue to perpetuate these things. And I also think that for me, rooted again in Buddhism, is can we touch contentment and satisfaction and peace with the moment, peace with what we have, peace with the disaster, peace with the anger, peace with the fear. And even that feeling of greed, which of course comes from a feeling of lack, this misperception that if I get that thing, then I'll feel better forever. It's just complete delusion. If we can meet it, then we don't have to engage in the action. We can just notice, oh, you're trying to take care of me. You greed had this misperception that that's going to bring lasting happiness. Ha 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 ha. Like, it's ridiculous. But mostly we don't take the time to touch into, to feel, see the fullness of that experience. Greed arises and we act. Even if it's just an action of the mind. Like I was doing Qigong outside today, it was really lovely. And then the mind wants to get and be like, oh, you should do Qigong every day. Why don't you do Qigong every day? It's like, no. Doing Qigong now. And the mind just does its thing. The mind has a mind of its own. And as we get stronger in our practice, it becomes more of a habit, whether it's rooted in compassion or awareness or some other wholesome root. Things change. They unfold and they grow toward wholesome when we're cultivating wholesome. And they grow toward unwholesome when we're cultivating unwholesome. So wherever we are, if we can actually recognize and see, oh, what's motivating this behavior? How's it feel in my body? Like I was offering to Trisha as she prepares to be with someone that she knows and a bunch of people she doesn't know and have these various things that are on her heart mind. Like, how's it actually feel to have that thought and to prepare to say that? What is it that I want to say? Where is it coming from? And as I've been saying often as part of Spiritual Friends Sangha, in the first 2 verses of the Dhammapada, when we act from an unwholesome mind state of greed, aversion, or delusion, unwholesome follows. Like that's just what happens. It's natural. It's the natural cause and effect. And when we act from a wholesome mind state, one rooted in compassion or love, care, presence, actual awareness, when we act from that place, wholesome follows. It's just the natural state of things. And we have a long history of people acting from greed. And where are we? Suffering abounds. It abounds. And last couple quotes from me, and then I'll pass the mic back from Danielle, and then we'll wrap up. We're getting close to that wrap-up time. But there's a phrase from the Buddha that was then offered by Gandhi and was offered by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King with slight changes. I'm not going to try to give each of those 3 verbatim, but the message is basically fear cannot drive out fear, or hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Maybe that's the answer to all of our problems. Love, love, love. Any closing words from you, Danielle? And then I'll take it back for our close.
Yeah, no, I think you brought it back to the energy that I return to most often, which I talk about a lot in my healing work, and the work that I teach, which is what justice feels like now for me, and what my definition is feeling safe enough to love and be loved. That is my definition of what justice means now, truly. And so from that place, I teach things to cultivate our nervous systems and resettle everything that we've inherited epigenetically and through our environments, to soften ourselves enough to be able to feel love deeply and to love others deeply again. And that is what justice is to me now, today. So that's what I do. And I think I'm so glad you brought it back to that, because I think that gets lost. And I think anger is loud, right? I think the other things are very loud. But to me, the whole point of it all, when I interview people, when I ask myself is what do you see? What do you see when you have everything? What's there? When everything is met, all of your needs are met, what's there? Oh, I'm with my family and our kids are healthy and they're running outside. Just love is there. That's it. So thank you for bringing us back to that, Augusta, and gratitude to all of you, seriously, and for inviting me to be able to talk about this sort of thing, which I don't get too often, but my fellow Buddhists understand. So thank you all so much for your loving attention.
Thank you so much, Danielle. It was deep and nourishing, and I received, and maybe I hope everyone received, your heartfelt transmission and the encouragement to love, right? The justice is when we feel safe enough to love and be loved, to offer and receive love. What an aspiration, what a wholesome aspiration. We can cultivate that in ourselves by taking care of ourselves and tending to ourselves, by recognizing what's actually happening right here, right now, in me, in this heart. Showing up, meeting it, greeting it. So if you're up for it, I encourage you to hold your hands to your face or give yourself a hug. Love yourself up a little bit. It's kind of amazing, but the body, the nervous system, it can't tell who it is that's offering that love. It's received. It's received. And it's worth exploring. It's worth trying it out. Because goodness knows life is hard. We don't get to escape suffering. None of us get out here alive. I've heard myself saying a lot lately. So thank you so much. So with this next bell, stretching and moving your body. So with this bell, we'll stretch our bodies in preparation for those who are able to stand. And with this next bell, we'll stand. And then we can bow to the Sangha. If you're on Zoom land, you might bow to your camera, but maybe there's someone else you want to look at in here in the space. We can bow to one another and include the Zoom monitor. And then in the space, we usually turn around 180. And if you're on Zoom, you might bow towards something, the window or a plant or your ancestors or a flower or flame, something that encompasses more, all, big, fullness. And I invite you to repeat after me. May the fruits of our practice be of benefit to all beings and bring peace and liberation to all. Thank you very much, Danielle.
Thank you
Good night,
all.